I installed a GPS and hidden cameras in my wife's car, which revealed shocking proof of her infidelity. She turned pale when I displayed them on our large home TV screen. I'm frequently on the road for work, away from home from Tuesday to Thursday 3 times a month. With 2 young children, aged 3 and 5, my wife takes on the role of a stay-at-home mother. To assist her, we have a nanny who helps out 4 days a week, allowing my wife time to run errands and handle shopping. Around 6 months ago, I stumbled upon a small lie my wife told me. It wasn't a major deception, just her claiming to be somewhere when I knew she wasn't. It bothered me, but I wasn't overly worried at that point. Just a week before the 4th of July, I decided to come back home early from my trip. I wanted to surprise my wife as the next day marked the anniversary of when we first met. Plus, I had received a hefty bonus 2 weeks ago and had booked a surprise trip for us to spend a week in St. Martin. I arrived late, around 11:30 p.m., after a FaceTime call with her and the kids a few hours earlier. During our conversation, she never mentioned any plans of going out that night. As soon as I arrived home, I found the nanny there. She informed me that my wife had left about an hour and a half ago. Confused and suspicious, I immediately texted my wife asking her what she was up to. Her reply stunned me, claiming she was about to go to bed. I couldn't help but retort, stating that it's quite funny because I had just arrived home and she was nowhere to be found. Upon her arrival, she quickly offered an explanation, claiming she had been out with 2 of her friends whose names she mentioned. She insisted that she didn't want me to worry about her absence. As the kids were being taken care of by our parents, we had never relied on the nanny before. I couldn't fully buy into her excuse, sensing something was amiss. But without concrete evidence, I had no grounds to confront her. Determined to uncover the truth, I took matters into my own hands the following day and discreetly ordered a GPS tracker for her vehicle, keeping my intentions hidden from her. Ever since then, I've caught my wife in multiple lies without even trying. She claims to be at one place, but it's evident she's elsewhere. Deciding to take action, I hired a private investigator and provided him with ample information. Strangely, my wife has been acting completely normal all day. We had plans for tonight, but I canceled, citing true illness. I don't anticipate anything significant happening until I depart on Tuesday morning. I decided to reach out to my friend who happens to be an attorney on Monday. Although he isn't a divorce lawyer, I believe he can offer some valuable guidance. Update. The private investigator I hired began following my wife on Tuesday when I left. He initially observed her going to the grocery store where she purchased 2 Visa gift cards. He suspects that she may be using them to pay the nanny for extra time without leaving a trace through checks or credit cards. Later, around 12:30 p.m., she left the house again and headed to the same location as before. The investigator witnessed a black Mercedes SUV pulling up, and my wife got into the vehicle. The private investigator continued to track the vehicle until it entered a gated community, where he unfortunately lost sight of them. The driver's identity remained unknown due to the heavily tinted windows. Using his realtor license, he managed to gain access to the community, but by the time he reached the house, they had already entered. They stayed inside for approximately 3.5 hours. Later, he observed my wife and another woman leaving the house together in the same vehicle. He followed them back to the location where my wife had parked her car. She returned home and did not leave for the rest of the day. On Wednesday, she took the kids with her to visit a few shops. That night, around 9:15, after our FaceTime call at 8:30, she left and headed to the same location. Once again, she met with the same woman. They went to a restaurant and spent a little over an hour there before returning to her house until 1:15 a.m. After being dropped off at her car, she went home, so at least for this week there was no guy involved. However, she never mentioned going out for dinner or anything to me. I'm at a loss for what to do now. The private investigator's services were quite expensive, and I'm not sure if I want to hire him again. I'm unsure whether to confront her directly or try to gather more information on my own. Update. These past few weeks have been tough, to say the least. Whenever I was away, I had the PI tailing her. It's been a repetitive pattern. Same meeting place, same woman picking her up. However, this Wednesday they deviated from their routine and went out for dinner. That's when the PI captured a photo of them embracing and sharing a passionate kiss at her usual parking spot. It's crystal clear that their relationship goes beyond mere friendship. This is concrete evidence, not just my gut feeling. I cut my trip short, returned home a day early. I arrived home unannounced. The house was quiet, the kids tucked into bed with the nanny reading them a bedtime story. I thanked her and sent her home, assuring her I would take it from there. My mind was reeling with the reality I was about to confront. I sat in the living room, the collected evidence laid out before me. Photos and video of my wife's infidelity displayed on the large home TV screen. It was a surreal and nauseating sight. When the sound of the front door creaking open echoed through the house, my heart thumped in my chest. She walked in, her smile faded when she saw me sitting in the darkened room. She tried to speak, her voice faltering when the screen flickered to life, illuminating the room with the harsh evidence of her betrayal. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "This is the truth," I replied, my voice firm but filled with an undercurrent of disappointment. "You lied to me, and not just about little things," she stammered, denying the evidence laid out before her, accusing me of invading her privacy. I countered her, reminding her that trust was a two-way street and that she had broken it first. I had merely followed her breadcrumbs to the truth. The atmosphere in the room grew tense as we confronted one another, our voices escalating. In the heat of the moment, I started to gather her belongings, hurling them out the front door. I demanded that she leave the house. She complied, but not before throwing a venomous look my way. In the weeks that followed, the divorce proceedings began. I exposed the proof of her infidelity to the wife of her affair partner, the shock and disbelief mirrored in her eyes. I also told her parents the story, their disappointment in their daughter evident. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. It was a grueling process, one filled with bitter arguments and tear-filled nights. However, with the help of my lawyer friend and the incriminating evidence, I won custody of our children. As I closed this painful chapter of my life, I began to focus on the future. The trust I had for my ex-wife was shattered, but my love for my children remained unscathed. I was determined to provide a loving and stable environment for them. The process of moving on was not an easy one. I had to grapple with feelings of betrayal, anger, and resentment. Yet I knew I had to let go of these negative emotions for the sake of my children and my own mental health. With time, the wounds began to heal. The house, once filled with tension and bitterness, slowly started to feel like home again. I found comfort in the mundane routines of everyday life, in the laughter and smiles of my children. Life moved on. And so did I. The betrayal was a painful part of my past, but it no longer defined my future. I learned the hard way that not all love stories have a happy ending, but this experience taught me the importance of truth, trust, and resilience in the face of adversity.